What's going on, everyone? Justin again, as always. Thanks for watching my channel. Welcome back. 2000 Mercury Sable with the 3-liter. Got a fuel pump, got a drive belt. Got this car for free from a friend of mine. He knew I was looking for a car for my daughter, whom will soon be 16, and she's working on getting her driver's license. Thought this would be a pretty good car to start on as far as her first car in driving. She babysits, so obviously she's going to need room for the kids that she babysits. And she also does some of the grocery shopping for her mother when her mother's unable to. So this will give her a lot of room with it being a Wagoneer and having plenty of space in the back, 2 or 3 row seating. We'll have to find out once we get the seats put in place. She's a little bit worse for wear because she's been sitting. So it is going to take a little bit of TLC, a little bit more TLC than we can afford to do today. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and she doesn't yet have her license, so we do have a little bit of time. I recommend anytime you're getting ready to buy a used car or receiving a used car from somebody, you go through and you inspect the whole entire thing, so that way you know what you're getting ready to get into before you get into it. More times than not, when you're buying a car from someone, you're probably not going to be able to get underneath it to look and see what the condition of the undercarriage is, to see if it's leaking. You may not even be able to see what the brakes are at without pulling the wheel off. Sometimes you get lucky, and with rims like this, by simply shining a flashlight through the spokes, you can get a rough idea of what the pads are at. Not every time are you going to be able to do this because some wheels make it too difficult to actually see what the brake pad is like through the wheel. Now, if you're an automotive mechanic, it's always recommended or strongly recommended that you take the wheel off and look at it. Okay, so lucky for us, we have the ability to be on a lift and here at the shop. But if you don't have access to a lift, maybe throw a jack underneath, some jack stands, and then go from there. But again, when you're buying a car, you might not be able to see it, and the seller might not be too hip for you busting out your jack to pull a wheel off. So what can you do to basically check the status of your brakes? Try taking it for a quick road test. Listen, do you hear any grinding? Does it squeak? I mean, squeaks could be anything. Could be dust, could be hardware, dragging, stuff like that. But if you hear a grinding, you know you're in for a wild ride and you're going to need brakes. Look at the tires. Look at the condition of the tires, okay? Tires are going to have stress cracks on it. So like on this one, we've got some cracks down here at the bottom, which is why the tire's been losing air. What you can also do is you look for the tire date or the DOT date. Now this one says 15/11. So these tires are from 2011. My tire guys know more about how to read tires than I do, but that's what I remember from it. So they're old and they need replacing. But now we have the wheel off, so we can get a better than good idea as far as what the conditions are from underneath. Is that a dead snake? Any rate, so we got about, looks like 8mm on the inner and outer pad. Yes, we got some rust here on the rotor. Not a big deal. It might squeak some. So what can you do about that? You can machine it. So if you are a mechanic and you have access to a shop, you can get a machine. Or you can just ride it the way that it is and eventually it'll clean itself up. It's just rust. Surface rust at that. All right, so we'll look at the strut. Strut's not leaking that we can see. Spring feels pretty solid. Sway bar links are torn, so we'll make an annotation of that. CV axle may have leaked once upon a time ago, but is all sludged up. Looks like we got an inner fender shield here that's fallen off. Looking at the engine mounts, look at the control arms, look at the tie rods. Look at the ball joints. This ball joint, she's a little worse for wear, so we'll probably need ball joints. Now we'll put it all the way up in there and we'll take a look underneath. Well, I got some spider webs. Not too bad. Body bushings look good. Nothing really leaking. I'm sure the transmission probably needs a service. I'm sure the oil needs to be changed. Even though the oil filter looks relatively new on here, we can't go by that though. I don't see any immediate leaks on the radiator side. Lower control arm bushings are starting to show signs of wear, but it's still in really good condition. There's only a little bit of cracks. The rear brakes also do not look too bad. If I had to guess just by peering through here, I'd say we were at about 6 millimeter, maybe a little bit more than that. Fuel tank, not going to be too big of a deal to drop from what I can gather here. A couple of 13s. And of course we'll have to disconnect the hose that goes towards the neck, so we'll do that. A couple of straps, we'll get a trans jack and we'll drop this thing down. Crikey, look at the size of that bugger. She's ready to attack, that's for sure. She is not happy by any means. I know. Look at him. Look at him being all scared, looking for spiders. Hey, screw you, buddy. We are not messing around here. Making sure there's no other ones in the same vicinity. You don't got to stick your hands up in here. I do. Perfect. We got the belt on, got the trans jack ready to go to drop the fuel tank, but I did forget to pick up the fuel filter, so we're going to go take off and pick up the fuel filter. I'm also going to get a transmission filter kit as well, but I got a picture of the tire size too. Hopefully Fred's Tire is open. We'll go ahead and get a price quote for some tires, and it'll give us a better idea of where we're at there. And then if I can get this thing to fire up and run after doing the fuel pump, charging the battery, changing the fluids, and it fires up, then we're probably going to go ahead and see if we can't drop these tires off and have them just go ahead and throw in some other tires. And if I can't do it today, we'll do it Monday. What do you guys want for lunch today? I'm thinking Subway. Eat fresh. Starving. O'Reilly's Auto Parts. Enough screwing around. Let's go inside and get our parts. We got work to do. Alright, we're back. I got the transmission kit and I got a fuel filter. So let's get started. Fix it or flip it? That's the question, right? Before you make the decision on whether or not you're actually going to end up keeping it, or if you're going to end up turning around and selling it, you're going to want to know how much money you're going to have to invest to get it running properly. One of the easiest things that you can possibly do is just pull the engine dipstick out, see where the fluid level is, look at the condition of the oil. The condition of the oil is going to tell you a lot. If it's a dark black, then you know that it hasn't been changed in a long time, or at all. If it's a light brown, a darkish light brown, then you know that it's probably had some miles put on it. Might not be a half bad idea in just changing out the oil. Transmission fluid and filter service, we got a kit for that. That's going to tell us roughly the condition of the transmission. So if we drop the transmission pan and we notice that there's fragments of metal or material in the bottom of the pan, such as this clip down here when this customer came in and had no driving gears, you can clearly see there was a lot of fragments of metal in there. That is an over-exaggerated truth to what it is that you're looking for when you drop the pan. You just really want to see what kind of condition that the fluid's in and how much metal is attached to the magnet. If there's just a little bit of goop on that magnet, well, then it probably just was due for service, and there's a good chance that there's still some life left in the transmission. I, for one, am not about putting Lucas additives in the transmission, okay? You don't need that. That's going to be too thick for the friction discs, and that could very well cause you more problems than it will do you any good. The same exact thing can be said about used transmission fluids. So if you do a transmission service and the vehicle has too many miles on it, changing that fluid out and putting new fluid in might also cause you transmission problems because you're losing the thickness that it had already developed as a result of worn friction material. So that metal is no longer incorporated into the actual transmission fluid, and now it's a super thin oil. Okay, the detergents are going to be there, but it's a little bit too late at that point, so it could also hurt you changing it too. The engine oil, and not going to hurt an engine by changing out the oil, but you can at least make sure that you don't have a blown head gasket. We're getting ready to put this thing in the air. We're going to drain both the transmission as well as the engine. What we're looking for when we're draining the oil is to make sure there's no coolant or water coming out first, followed by a series of oil or milky sludge. So that's what we're looking for there. The transmission, we want to get an idea of what's in the bottom of the pan and what kind of condition it's in when we go ahead and pull it, dump it out. Before we do that though, we do want to make sure that we have a dipstick. Not all cars have a transmission dipstick. Now when you pull the dipstick out and the car's sitting as it is right now, it's going to look like it's overfilled, but that's simply not what the case is. On most dipsticks, it'll actually tell you to check when it's hot, look for the fluid to be within the cross hatches, and to check it within park or neutral. So in this case, when we're pulling it out while it's just sitting here, we're just basically, want to get a rough idea of the condition of the fluid first before we go dropping the pan. It looks a little bit dark, but not so dark that it should be a problem. 2, the second thing that we're looking for is to make sure there's a dipstick available, because some of them will have a tube and a cap that says non-serviceable. These types of transmissions, you do have, let me go grab it real quick. You do have these dormant or aftermarket transmission dipsticks, and on them they'll have fluid indicators that you can check, and most of these you'll have to use a scan tool for by plugging into the DLC, looking at the transmission temperature, and then checking the level on the dipstick to make sure you have a sufficient level. These dormant dipsticks can be picked up from any auto parts supplier, be it O'Reilly's like we were at earlier today. You might even check Napa or AutoZone. Since we're already here under the hood, before we start draining fluids, let's go ahead and pull a plug. And this should give us a rough idea of the condition of the engine, hopefully. Or at least the condition of the spark plugs, if nothing else. Plugs are definitely old, but they are in iridium. These are auto lights. Not the spark plug of choice for me when it comes to this particular engine. This being a Ford product, I'm going to end up putting some Motorcraft ones in there. And they do look a bit old, so it wouldn't be a half bad idea for us to go ahead and change them out. Now knowing that I have auto lights and that they are old, we'll go ahead and do so, but there's still some electrode there and the gap appears to be normal, okay? This will be sufficient enough for us to be able to start the car and see if it runs. I love these headlights, man. They have definitely come in handy. If you guys are interested in these, which I've had a lot of comments from you guys saying that you would love to have a pair of these, who makes them, how much, etc. They go for about $23. They're made by EZRED, and I'll put the Amazon link down in the description for you if you're interested in picking them up. But love them, love them, love them, love them. Okay, no coolant. We're off to a good start. Just dark, dark oil. All right, so while that's draining, I will go ahead and find a socket that will fit our transmission drain plug. This is unusual. You don't see this on a lot of transmissions, so that's huge. That's beneficial to us, and I'll explain why. Okay, remember when I talked about how some vehicles don't have transmission dipsticks and you'll have to go by temperature and buy an aftermarket dipstick from Dorman, whether you buy it online or you go to the actual parts store and try to find one that closely matches what you're going to need for your vehicle. Well, if you're not leaking any transmission fluid, okay, if you're not leaking transmission fluid and you do not have a dipstick, nor did you buy one, but you can unscrew the cap and still put fluid in, so long as you catch everything that you took out and then you pour it into a measuring receptacle, so that way you can determine how much fluid you took out, you can pour that same amount of fluid back in, and 10 times out of 10, you're gonna be just fine. Doesn't really smell burnt, and it doesn't look too dark. So far so good, we're off to a good start. Like I said, if you don't have a dipstick, make sure you catch all this in a separate receptacle, so that way you can measure how much you took out. Okay, moment of truth. I don't know how well the camera's going to pick this up. What I would consider probably a normal amount of friction material where the magnet has definitely picked up some friction material. I can see it here on the bottom of the pan. It's not enough to scare me out of the car, to be honest. It does look like a moderately used car. Okay, this thing does have, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there is a fair amount of pickup on the magnet. Okay, but it doesn't scare me out of it. I don't see any chunks, so that's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this over to the parts washer, get it all cleaned up, and then hopefully get this whole thing back together. Don't forget that. We'll clean that up and put it back later. We're going to save that old gasket because it's known as a reusable gasket based on the material that it's made out of. On the offset chance that the kit that we got, the gasket's wrong, because there could be two different styles of transmission for this one. There was two different styles of fuel tank, 16 gallon and an 18 gallon. We went with the 18 gallon. Hopefully that's what it is. So right now I'm using our mineral spirits tank to try to clean up as much of the sludge and grime as I possibly can before we put it in our parts washer. I don't want to get our parts washer filled with sludge if I ain't got to. So I'm going to try to take off what I can using the mineral spirit tank before I go ahead and drop our pan in there. Okay, so while the parts washer is doing its thing, we're going to head back over to the Sable now. We're going to lower it down. We're going to evacuate the AC system, just see how much charge was in this car. This will give us an idea of whether or not there could be a potential leak, or if it was just a little bit low on charge and it just needs to be recharged. We want the AC system working properly for her. All right, so now we'll go ahead and hook up the AC machine up to our service ports here. We'll go ahead and start the recovery process and just see how much Freon is still in the system. I know that some of you are probably wondering, hey brother man, if I don't have an AC machine, how can I check out the system? Well, you can do what's called an AC performance test and do it down and dirty style. Basically drive around, throw the AC on, okay? Make sure it's blowing cold. If it is blowing, but not as cold as it should be, how cold is it getting? You can have somebody cycle the AC switch on and off while you're looking down at the compressor with a flashlight to make sure it's turning on or off. This will work for the majority of vehicles, but there are manufacturers, Audi, Volkswagen, what was it? Some of the new 1234YFs, I believe, are different. There's an internal worm drive, so you might not get the cycling of the clutch turning on and off. But something this old will have that ability, so you can just have someone turn the switch on and off while you listen to it as it spins. You'll see. Okay, so that's one. Make sure your cooling fan's working properly. Make sure your belt is working properly and it's not slipping. Stuff like this will help you. You can go one step farther and You can get a UV light and glasses. I'll grab mine. Okay, so utilizing a UV light and some glasses, yellow glasses specifically, you can determine on, near, around the ports, the lines, is there any refrigerant leaking out? You're looking for a bright green color. And if you don't see any leaking out anywhere, then chances are you don't have a leak. There's a good chance that you don't have a leak then. Okay, I'm not seeing anything with the UV light and glasses. That doesn't mean that there still couldn't potentially be a leak. One of the most common places that I find leaks are on the Schrader valves, which is where the service ports are, right where we're hooked up to, okay? Those valves will leak. A good way to check that would be to hit it with some brake clean, use a UV light and glasses, and see if the PAG oil comes back or starts to bubble up. Not all systems are gonna have this type of oil in it, okay? PAG oil in general does not come in this color. This is a dye. This is a dye additive. Most PAG oil is gonna be clear. It's gonna make it very hard for you to see. Again, if you don't see a leak right away, that doesn't mean that there's not a leak in the system. It could just be that you don't have dye in your system, in which case you'll have to inject dye and then go back through and retest, okay? Other things that are gonna throw you off is rodent urination. I don't know what it is about rodents, if they have some kind of nuclear reactive urine, but the stuff is about as bright green as I just showed you. All right, so this is gonna do its thing. We need to get a battery charger on this, and then we'll go back and check our transpan. Came out looking pretty good. Almost brand new in comparison to what it was. So, with our magnet back in its special little spot, this next thing that I'm getting ready to do, you don't have to do it, okay? It's just something that I do. And I'll explain why it is that I do it. Of course, you don't have to do this step. It's not required. What I like to do is I like to run a thin bead all the way around the pan, set my gasket on it, then flip everything over and set it down on a surface for a little bit until the silicone sets up. That one, flattens the gasket. Two, secures it to the pan so it's not shifting on me when I'm putting it up there. When I go and remove it for the next service, the gasket is attached to the pan, not attached to the transmission. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a thin bead on here. Again, it's something that I do. You don't have to. A lot of people ask me why I do this to a lot of the different gaskets that I do. It's just something that I've been doing for years, and I haven't had any issues as a result of doing it, okay? I know that there are certain gaskets that come with water pumps that are made out of paper, cork, rubber, etc. that, you know, I'm being asked all the time, why do you put RTV on both sides? You shouldn't have to, just bolt it in. That's cool. If that's what works for you, then do it. This is what works for me. It's something that I've done, I'm going to continue to do, and no one's really going to change my mind as a result. Okay? So, now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and set this on here now. I'm just going to follow the holes around. Okay, now at this point, I can just walk right on over if I want to and stab it on in, okay? I do not have to wait for this to set up. Like I told you guys I was going to do, I can literally throw it right back in. But I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to let it set up. We're going to head on back because we're multitasking. Let's go see if this AC machine held a vacuum. Cool. After 20 minutes, 10 minutes of vacuum, 10 minutes of it doing its leak test, it's still in the black, which means this thing has no leaks. We can go ahead and fill it up now, and I am going to add dye to it. 0.790 kilogram. So let's exit. Let's inject some oil. We want to inject half an ounce, maybe quarter ounce. Just a little bit. Don't need a lot. So we'll go ahead and let that charge up. I'm not getting any action out of this battery charger though. Either this thing is dead, or the outlet that I chose to plug the battery charger in is no good. So we're going to turn this off, and I'm going to unplug it since it's not doing us any good right now. I should have totally looked at that first. The reason why this battery isn't charging at all, and I didn't think about it, which I should have, just wasn't thinking, right? 8 of 2012. This battery is 8 years old. This battery is no good. That is a metal tank. Hopefully it's not varnished. Oh, we got to change our fuel filter too. Let me just do that real quick. There's for our evap lock. Twist, twist, twist. I need, oh, this is going to be fun. Thank God I kept it in mild reach. There's that screwdriver. Yeah. Oh yeah, we got to change this one hose for sure. You ever want to know what varnished gasoline looks like? There you go. It's like a reddish or an amberish color. And this tank is definitely seen a lot of sitting. We're going to need fresh fuel. We don't want to try to start it with this. And I don't want to put the fuel pump in. Now, there was the question of whether or not it was the 18-gallon or the 16-gallon fuel tank. Me not knowing which, we went with the bigger one. And I have a feeling this might be the 16-gallon. So now is a perfect time for us to measure our pump. Let's line it up. Okay, the connectors look right. Actually, that is the right one. So this is the 18-gallon. So our fuel pump will work. Now it's just a matter of getting rid of the old fuel, getting some new fuel, and cleaning out the tank. So stay tuned. Looks like we're back here and back at it again tomorrow for Fix Her Ride. Try to see if I can't get my 16-year-old daughter's car prim and proper, okay? Because at this point, we're invested. We're invested. I hope you guys enjoyed today's content. If you did, make sure to smash the thumbs up button. Leave a comment down below if you enjoyed today's content, and if you're looking forward to the next episode. It's not like I get a chance to do these repair videos very often, but when I do, I know that some of you guys actually do like them, so make sure you tell me. And that's all I got for now. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers and deuces.